Good afternoon and welcome to the Wings of Hope Memorial Event. Appreciate so much you joining us again this year for our 7th annual event. My name is Jeannie McLaughlin and I'm the President CEO of the Visiting Nurse and Hospice for Vermont and New Hampshire. Today we're here to remember our loved ones. We often refer to the dying process as a journey. I read a recent article that characterized the end of life as follows. For some, it is swift and unexpected, while for others it's the sound of a distant thunder at a picnic. While for the majority of us, it is likely that death will come at the end of a well-worn downhill staircase. As our time winds down, we become less interested in grand achievements and accumulation and more interested in the joy of simply being. Recent studies describe factors that have the greatest impact on the end of life satisfaction. The 3 most important factors they cite are being pain-free, feeling at peace with good emotional balance, and then third, dying in a place deemed ideal by the individual. These are all the aspects that the V&H Hospice strives to achieve with each individual and their families and loved ones. Additional factors include feeling ready to say goodbye and accepting the end, having a sense of purpose and fulfillment in the life lived, having treatment preferences met, loved ones being present, and having a good relationship with healthcare providers. The purpose and priority of hospice care is to meet these important factors, helping to ensure that each person has the opportunity to have a meaningful end of life experience. Today, as we remember our loved ones, we are also here to celebrate their lives. It is a reminder to all of us to simply be in the moment and joy of simply being. We thank you for the opportunity you have permitted V&H Hospice to have in your lives and those of your loved ones. We're honored. And again, we thank you for joining us today. I'm going to ask Heidi Smith to come up with an inspirational message.
Nearly every culture and religion view butterflies as a symbol of transformation and the spiritual journey of souls from life to death, and often to a rebirth of some sort. It is no wonder the life cycle of a monarch butterfly is a study in courage, strength, and allowing nature to guide life. Monarchs are born from eggs that are deposited only on milkweeds. They feed on the leaves of the milkweed until such time as they realize it is time to create their pupa or cocoon. Inside the cocoon, they undergo a remarkable transformation from a green, yellow, black, and white striped caterpillar to a magnificent black and orange butterfly. They do not die in the pupa, but rest while the transformation is completed, and then are reborn to something far more beautiful. They spend the summer feeding on their favorite flowers. While they feed and grow, we have the blessing of their great beauty and grace. When the temperatures start to drop and the time is right, they get some sort of invisible cue to head south. Following an instinctual and eternally occurring 3,000-mile journey to Mexico, they congregate in massive numbers, keeping each other warm until spring, when they make the same journey back to North America and Australia. Imagine the journey these supposedly delicate creatures make. They must survive first the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, then a summer winging around our yards and roadsides where much danger lurks, and then they fly through the wind, rain, and whatever other challenges rise to impede their journey until they get to where they're meant to go. What has this to do with our loved ones who have died, whose memory we honor here today? I've spent many years now supporting people who make a different kind of transformation and journey. I find some of the same qualities of courage and strength, as well as the instinctual response to go home in them. We too complete a cycle of life that necessitates a transformation from one state of being to another. And it takes a great deal of courage to see this process through. I speak as one who believes that there is more to life than just what we see and experience in this lifetime. I have simply witnessed too many transitions where people spoke of things they saw, heard, or felt from another realm. So it is with this lens of life, death, and rebirth that I believe death is a natural part of life. Just as the butterfly is transformed from a land-bound, not so pretty caterpillar to a gorgeous, flight-enabled creature, so we are transformed from this life in the flesh to something far more beautiful and effortless. I don't pretend to know what that looks like, but I believe it is more than we can imagine. That gives me hope, and I try in the work I do to communicate that hope to those who are entering that stage of transformation. Death is not the end, but the transition from this life to something else. As to what that looks like, I propose that since no one has ever been able to come back and tell us definitively, we are free to create the most comforting and hopeful image we like, and that is as good as any other. I have often witnessed the moment when a person does know what it looks like and gladly and naturally releases their attachment to this earthbound state of being. Though they rarely can relate what they have seen, it is enough and a privilege for me to bear witness to the acceptance of this transition. I would close with a short poem whose author is unknown and hope that somewhere in my reflection you have felt some hope of your own and an appreciation for the journey your loved one undertook and that we too will undertake someday. Butterflies, the symbol of new life and rebirth, are fluttering all around me. They circle my head, land on my arms, and dance at my feet. I've never seen so many butterflies, never seen so many kinds. Delicate wings, colors like sky and grass and earth. Their flight is a motion of freedom and calmness, and it is beautiful to see. Please let death be a butterfly with our loved ones, soaring in an existence that is so too wonderful for us to comprehend.
Because I knew you.
in this lifetime. But let me say before we part, so much of me is made of what I learned from you. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart. And now, whatever way our stories end, I know you have rewritten mine by being my friend. Like a ship blown from its mooring by a wind off the sea, like a sea drop by a skybird in a distant wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? Because I knew you. Because I knew you. I have been changed for good. And just to clear the air, I ask forgiveness for the things I've done you blame me for. But then I guess we know there's blame to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a comet blows like a shower as it passes us by a window, like a stream that meets like a sea drop by a skyward in the wood. Who can say if I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. And because I knew you, because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good.
Wow. Wasn't it a beautiful song? Sung by our very own volunteer coordinator, Darcy, and her beautiful young daughter. What courage it took to stand up here in front of you and sing that song. I have to tell you, there are a lot of powerful words in that song that have meaning for me. The most important was the words, people come into our lives bringing something we must learn. Hi, my name is Cindy Scott, and I've had the privilege of directing the hospice team here at VNH for the past 2 years. I've worked for hospice in over 20 years, and I've been lucky enough to have cared for and learned from hundreds of patients. My journey in hospice started in 1988, yes, that long ago. I was working in a pediatric unit in a community hospital in my home state of West Virginia. One afternoon, a 15-year-old boy was admitted with highly advanced case of acute leukemia. His family was poor, and although he was very sick, they found it very difficult to travel the 30 miles to visit him regularly, so he was often left alone. He started on a very strong chemotherapy regime to battle the cancer, and although there were many expected side effects, his doctor didn't believe that children should be told what was going on. So each night, while I cared for him, he asked, and I answered, the many questions he had. Will my hair fall out with this chemo? All of it? Do you think I'll ever live to kiss a girl? 'Cause I haven't so far. Do you think I'm gonna die? Of course, I had no answers to his questions, but I listened, and over time we forged a warm and wonderful relationship. I became like a second mom to him, the one who could provide him with the companionship and comfort he desperately needed. But as you can guess, in his case, the chemo lost and the cancer won. I was with him and his family when he lost his battle to cancer. I must tell you, I was devastated by his death, feeling lost and angry and upset that things had gone so wrong for him. His experience went so profoundly bad in so many ways that I wondered if I would have to leave nursing altogether. But, oh, Philip, you came into my life for a reason. You knew I had so much to learn, and you soon provided me with an opportunity to do just that. Within a few weeks of his death, I was caring for another teenager, this time a young girl who had her appendix out. While walking her down the hall, she said to me, "Oh, my mom's a nurse too." And I said, "Oh, really? What does your mom do?" And she said, "Oh, she's a hospice nurse, and she's starting a program here." Voila! Now I was given an opportunity to help people in ways I couldn't do in the confines of a hospital. But could I do that? Aren't those hospice people angels of mercy? Well, I was just a mere hospital nurse. I didn't have the slightest idea how to care for the dying, but off I went on my journey of discovery. Over the course of the next 20 years, I put on my learner's hat and sat at the bedside of life's best teachers, the dying. Please bear with me while I share just a few of the lessons that I learned. First, there was Mrs. G, a beautiful woman living in a beautiful home with an attentive husband and 2 grown daughters who lived near and participated in her care. Unfortunately, due to the type of cancer she had, her pain was overwhelming and unrelenting, and despite multiple changes in her medication, she continued to suffer. Her experience haunted me after her death until I met her daughter one afternoon at the grocery store. After offering my condolences and my sincere apologies for never quite getting her pain under control, her daughter offered some insight that changed things for me. You see, Mrs. G's husband was having an affair with her best friend, and she knew it. No amount of medication was going to heal her broken heart. Her emotional suffering was deep, pain known only to those who have felt betrayed. So thank you, Mrs. G. I now know to watch for pain that may not be physical in nature. Next, there's Mark, a young 30-year-old male with cancer, the brother of one of our staff. During the last 3 days of Mark's life, he exhibited symptoms that I had never seen before and had no idea how to manage. His restlessness, anxiety, and constant screaming in terror were difficult to watch. I tried all of my usual nursing tricks and nothing worked. The screaming and writhing continued. I was frustrated and feeling helpless and hopeless until the chaplain arrived. You see, she remembered that Mark had once told her he loved to attend Vacation Bible School when he was a little boy. And so she asked us if we would all circle his bed, hold hands, and sing songs from his childhood. I must admit at the time I thought this sounded quite bizarre. Certainly not this was not something we would have ever done in the hospital, but she started singing, and so I started singing too. And within moments, Mark quieted down. The screaming stopped, the writhing stopped. The gentle words of his childhood song, "Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world," was just enough to relieve his fears and remind him no matter what secrets he had, and he had many, he was loved unconditionally. This peacefulness remained with Mark until his passing the following day. So thank you, Mark, for teaching me about spiritual pain and the importance of unconditional love. Lastly, one of my most challenging but rewarding hospice lessons. Mr. S was described by all who knew him as a crabby old man. During my initial visit, he let me know he didn't need me or my goody two-shoes hospice staff. He was doing just fine, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking beer all day. Despite the fact his advanced lung cancer had him riddled with pain and his shortness of breath so severe he couldn't lie down, he continued to say he was just fine. What I can only describe as divine intervention, or quite possibly my own stubbornness in not letting go, I finally convinced him we weren't there to tell him how to live his life, we were only there to help. So after I promised him he could fire us at any time, he agreed for our help. We soon learned that his wife had died a few years ago, and his children, although living in the neighborhood, refused to visit him because of his irascible behavior. Over the course of the next few weeks, we got his pain under control and his shortness of breath managed. The improvement in his pain and shortness of breath resulted in an improvement in his disposition. The social worker then went to work furiously to help him heal old family wounds. Over time, the children became involved in his care, and in fact, so profound was the relationship healing that the children rented a motorhome and drove together with him across the United States to fulfill his lifelong wish of visiting the Grand Canyon. So thanks, Mr. S., for coming into my life to teach me it is never too late to heal old hurts, and even the most dysfunctional families can find peace and joy when sharing an end-of-life experience. Of course, my stories could go on and on and on, but I won't. Let me just share my final thoughts. Many of you in the audience have had someone you care about die. Maybe like me, you were angry, lost, frustrated. If so, I hope you'll take a few minutes to pause and reflect like I did on the lyrics of the song that Darcy and her daughter just sung. People come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow if we let them, and we help them in return. And while I don't know if it is true, I know that I am who I am today because I knew you. To all of the patients whose lives I had the honor to cross and the deaths to witness, I thank you. For because of you, I am who I am today, a hospice nurse. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Darcy Sylvester, and I'm the volunteer coordinator at B&H. At B&H, we're very blessed to have an amazing team of about 80 volunteers who willingly and lovingly give up their time to go through the hospice process with our patients and their loved ones. Today, we have one of our V&H volunteers here to talk about why she volunteers her time, Catherine Randall.
I am so honored to be with all of you today. You see, I do a lot of things, but this is the most important thing that I do. I'm Catherine. I'm a professor at Dartmouth. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I am a hospice volunteer. And, and I am here also because I know what it is to face death. When I was 25, I was diagnosed with what the doctors told me was incurable brain cancer. And I did not die, but live. And that gives me the hope and the joy and the ability to stand here today and tell you that you have not lost your loved ones. They are just beyond. There is a very thin membrane between us and them, and they are waiting on that other shore. And I know this, and I want you to know that too. Because what hospice brings us is hope, like the butterfly wings. And hospice teaches us compassion. For those of you who are Roman Catholic, the heart of Mother Mary. For those of you who are Buddhist, the practice of intentional discipline and respect for every form of life. For those of you who are Protestant, the certainty that those words in Holy Scripture are true. And I don't know what you believe, but this is what I know. This is an extraordinary experience, hospice. And it was something that was hard fought for. Hospice came into the United States from England, and it was a struggle. Our hero, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, fought to make it possible for families like you to have their loved ones cared for by capable hands and compassionate hearts and people of hope. Hospice started ages ago. It meant a way station on a pilgrimage for people who were exhausted and could go no further without help. And my experience as a hospice volunteer is that is what this team does. From extraordinary Cindy, our director, who gives herself the title of hospice nurse, not director, and stands before you with tears in her eyes because she believes so deeply in what she is doing, to Darcy, who deals with all of us crazy volunteers and encourages us and is always kind, to chaplains like Sue Church, who is giving enormously of her energy. Everyone I have met in this experience has uplifted and inspired me and made me believe, as I think you must too, that as the Sisters of Charity said, for Sainted Mother Teresa of Calcutta, we tend these homeless, these dying, because we have come to believe that they are gods in human form. Because I know the kindness of strangers, the night nurse, who every evening when she checked on me after my brain surgery, took her hand and placed it alongside my cheek and gave me love. Because there are angels all around us. They just have human faces. The faces of hospice patients, hospice families, and hospice workers. I want to leave you with a poem that was written and given to me the night before one of my parishioners died. She was on hospice, and this is what she prayed. I want to do this without the microphone. I'll try. Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me now? Oh, great. I don't want anything between you and me when I do this, but oh well. Imagine I'm right there. Okay. God of the mountain, God of the sea, God of all glory, maker of me. God of the sunshine, God of the rain, God of comfort, God of pain. Lead me safely through this valley till I reach the farthest height. Hold my hand within the shadow till I stand immersed in light. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today to help us celebrate the lives of our hospice patients. About, gosh, it must be almost 10 years ago now when I started doing this work in hospice as a chaplain. My friends and family would say to me, gosh, isn't that depressing, being with dying people all day long? And you know, I discovered it's not. Because although it is death that gathers us today, beyond that, it is life and love. Our hospice patients are going on a journey that most of us have not been on yet, but they are filled with so much life and so much love. And this I have learned day by day and patient by patient and family by family. You know, at our heart, we are all stories. And so much of the work that I do is walking with people through the stories of their lives, hearing the things that have given them joy, hearing some of the pain, hearing those wishes that, if I could have a do-over, it would be. But they're all stories, and they all have to do with life. I'm thinking about a family this week who was gathered around the bedside of their dad who was dying. And the stories that they told me, with laughter and with a light in their eyes and with love. They said, you know, Dad told us the most important thing is us, family, and being present with each other. And so we're here, and we're going to be here for as long as it takes. That's about life. That's about love. I'm thinking of another patient that I talked with recently who said, you know, when I go to bed at night, I think back about my life. And I know that there are many things that I haven't done as well as I could have or should have. And I think about those things. But at the end of the day, I look back and ask myself, did I make a difference? Did I leave, and will I leave some good in this world? And I look at my family, at my children, and my grandchildren, and I see what marvelous people they are and what wonderful lives they are creating. And so I go to sleep in peace because I know them and I know their lives. That's not about death, brothers and sisters. That's about life. That's about memory. None of us escape death. We aren't any of us getting out of this alive, so they say. And so we all have experiences with people dying, and we remember. It is those memories that help us along the way. I remember my mom, and I think about the little momisms that she used to say, like every time we pulled into the driveway, she would say, "Here we are, home again, jiggity jig." Every time. And when something surprised her, she would say, "Oh my goodness, and strawberry lollipops." I can't imagine where that came from, but she used that phrase so often. And I think of that sometimes when I'm surprised, and in my head I hear that voice, and it just gives me such deep and heartfelt joy. I think about my nephew who died before his 19th birthday, and how when he was a little guy, he couldn't say Aunt Susan. It came out more Aunt Ocean, and that's what he called me all of his life. I loved being Ian's Aunt Ocean. Okay, I'll tell you a secret. I use Ocean along with other things in many of my computer passwords. It's about life, folks. I encourage you today, as you release these butterflies, to know that you too are transformed. Grief is sharp and hard, and yet, like butterflies, we wrap ourselves, cocooning ourselves in the memories, sometimes the painful memories, most often the wonderful memories, the love that we shared with the one that we have lost. And in that cocooning, the pain and the roughness is smoothed out and softened until finally we are able to burst free from pain and rejoice in a new life on gossamer wings, bringing with us those who have gone before us, for they live always right here in our hearts, companioning us, comforting us, caring for us as we continue on our journeys. Today, friends, be butterflies and fly free.
When the Lord into his gardens comes, the spices yield a rich perfume. The lilies grow and thrive, the lilies grow and thrive. Refreshing showers of grace divine from Jesus flow to every vine, and make the dead revive, and make the dead revive. Refreshing showers of grace divine from Jesus flow to every vine, and make the dead revive, and make the dead revive. Oh, then we'll laugh and dance and sing, and make the upper regions ring, when all the saints get home, when all the saints get home. Come on, my brethren dear, soon we will meet together there, when Jesus bids us come, when Jesus bids us come. Come on, my brethren dear, soon we will meet together there, when Jesus bids us come, when Jesus bids us come.
Elias and Ella Abbas. Arnold Abbas Sr. Marjorie Abramson. Richard Abramson. Judy Alexander. Phyllis Allen. J.B. Engel. Norman R. Engel. Leo Babineau. Joe Della Badea. Rusty Bailey. Harold Baker. Marion Baker. Elizabeth Balzer. Geraldine Bandy.
Betty Barkus, Janice Bartlett, Jerry Bassett, Mr. Gardner C. Batten, Virginia Batten, Miss Carol A. Becker, Catherine Bellman, Josephine Belmont, Sylvester Belmont, David Berg, Robert Bernard, Carol Ann Best, Christine Bickford, Earl Bickford, James Bigger,
Elaine Biggs, George Biggs Sr., Franklin S. Billings Jr., Helen Billings, Richard Billings, Holly Blackie, Wilfred Blaine, Iola Blair, Edward Blanchard, Vivian Blanchard, Valerie Bly, Beatrice Bono, John and Jean Borcher, Victor Bohr, Victor Boré, Shirley Bootwell.
David John Brand, Stephen Brand, Buckley family, Jay Cadence, Craig Cadwallader, Fran Cady, Francis Calcaterra, Pat Callahan, Margaret Coulter, Mr. and Mrs. Alan Campbell, Lenny Carlson, Bill Carr, David Carr, Tom Carr, Russell Carver,
Carrie, Teresa Shabbat, Ruth Chafee, Reader Chandler, Cleon and Joyce Chapman, Bo Chesley, Shirley Clement, Harry Cody, Olive Cody, Kathleen Cole, Helen Colvin, Edna Comstock, Thomas Comstock, Mrs. Alice W. Conkey, Diane Connolly,
Elizabeth L. Cook, Elton H. Cook, Mrs. Joanne Corrett, Ralph Corrett, Rebecca Richardson Corrett, Corrine, Donna Cornelius, Bob Cotter, Annie Crandell, Harry Critchley, Alice Cross, Josephine Curello, Stephanie Dabrowski, Dr. Tom Dabrowski, Ruth Dash.
Tom Danyo, Richard W. Dalrymple, Kevin Scott Dalrymple, Elizabeth Betty Dankert, Benjamin Keck Dobbensbeck, Eleanor Mildred Dobbensbeck, Mary Eleanor Dobbensbeck, Steve Davis, Ms. Elizabeth Davison, Ben Dearman, Esther Decato, Eugene Decato, Harold Decato, Yvonne Decato, Willem DeGroot,
Bruce Deming, Lillian DeVoe, William DeVoe, Adrian DeVoe, Claire Dibble, Esther Dickow, Betty Dodson King, Ted and Francis Drawl, Miss Cecilia Dumas, Connie Dumas, Ernest Dunbar, Alan Dunkley Jr., Christian Dunkley, Mr. Peter R. Dupre, Gertrude Eastman,
Esteban Ugia, Adelaide M. Ide, Stanley Ide, Bert Isley, Oscar W. Ekberg, Gladys Eli, Lois B. Eli, Mary Fenn, Nancy Furland, Doris Finnegan, Mike and Anna Fisher, Mickey Fisher, Cecil Fisk, Leona Fisk, Martha Fisk.
T. Kelly Fitzpatrick, Lawrence Flannery, Stanley Flint, Jan Olson Floyd, John Fortunato, Al Frazier, Barbara Frazier, Sarah Freeney, Harold H. Frost, Ann Fullerton, Frank Gamelin, Kristen Gardner, Kathleen Gatz, Joyce L. Gay, Franklin E. George,
Nancy Gerlach, Miss Peggy Gilbert, Rosanna and Roger Gillies, Amy Goins, Christine White Goodwin, Elvery Joel Goodwin, Melissa Gordon, James Grabman, Lois Grace, Ginny Grant, Corella Gray, Marissa Gray, Great Grandma and Grandpa, Richard Greenwood, Donald Griggs,
Halton Al Grindle, Alexander Hayden, Bernard W. Haley Jr., Isabel E. Haley, Gertrude Halliday, Adeline Mara Hammond, Helen Hanchett, Joan Hanson, Bob Harlow, Peg Harlow, Mrs. Dorothy Harpootlian, Herman Hartman, Richard Hoger, Julia Haynes, Constance Hazelton.
Jeffrey Hazelton, Martha Hazelton, Wesley Hazelton Sr., Ken Heidelman, Donald Hesterberg, Yvonne Heider, Albert J. Hines, Ann Hirsch, Shirley Hoffman, Doris Holbrook, Karen Honeycutt, Millie Hubbard, Elaine Huckins, Ronald Huckins, Emily Huntley.
Helen Huntley, Joanne Huntley, Llewellyn Huntley, Mark Hutchins, Arthur Hyde, Francis Hyde, Gladys Highland, Maurice Highland, Ruby and Kenneth Ilsley, Edith Ingalls, Mr. Alfonso Izzo, Margaret Izzo, Brandy Jackson, John Jackson, Michael Jarvis,
Alfred Jeffers, Ruth Jeffers, Joan Johnson, Barbara Kaufman, Frank M. Kimball, Mrs. Miriam Kingsbury, Edward F. Kinney, Betty Kipp, Douglas Kipp, Lorna Kirk, Bud Klingstein, Dee Klingstein, Greg Klochek, Mr. Clarence Knapp.
Sigrid Jorgensen, Mrs. Ann Coop, Callista Christensen, Lorraine Cruz, Louis Kunkel, Anthony LaBombard, Gerard LaBombard, Dorothy LeClaire, Nelson and Dorothy LeClaire, Elgin Ladd, Mr. Kim S. Ladd, Nelson Ledoux, June LaFlamme, Addie Lamb, Ms. Joan Larson, Linda S. Lozen,
Emily and George Lawrence, Barbara Lazarus, Harry Lazarus, Boomer LeDrew, Jean LeDrew, Joanne Leeming, Wilson Leeming, Durward J. Lenz, Mary Lenza, Sabrina Letts, Ryan Levesque, Mary Jane Lober, Echo Lober Kays, Donald Locke, Timothy Locke,
Howard Logan, Bob Loisel, Mrs. Beatrice B. Lovejoy, Robert Lowry Sr., Richard Lyman, John and Grace McDonald, Neil McKenzie, Mary McGuire, Melvin Mandigo, Nancy Mandigo, Virginia Manning, Wayne Manning Sr., Robert Marcroft, Roger Marcroft,
Betty Lutsky, Ruth Marsh, Shirley Martin, Maurice Mazzicotti, Molly Mazzicotti, Dot Machulonis, Janet McClellan, Eleanor McCumsky, Velma McDonald, Bonnie McCormick, Dennis McCullough, William McDonald, Bill McFadden, Rose and Dawn McGonis, Adelaide McLaughlin, Clarence McLaughlin,
Molly Williams McLaughlin, Lorraine McVicker, Mary Lee Meek, Barbara Melandy, Sterling Melandy, Camille Menino, Donald Merchant, Dorothy Meyer, James Middleton, Christopher Miller, Elizabeth K. Miller, Lauder Miller, Sandra Molnar, Al Morpeth, Doreen Morrill,
Faye Morrill, William Moulton, Wendy Mudd, Barbara Munson, Beverly Much, James Much, Eileen Neal, James Needham, Phyllis Newton, Nicole, Mrs. Anita Noizo, Ann Novinsky, James Lewis Olson, Virginia Papsky, Sheila Paget,
Clay Haney, Marie Pollack, Mitchell Pollack, Coburn F. Palmer Jr., Douglas W. Palmer, Julia A. Palmer, Lawrence Palmer, Mrs. Juliet E. Pear, Mr. and Mrs. Lyle Patterson, Rebecca Paul, Beatrice Perry, Edwin W. Phoenix, Barbara Pilletz, Dr. Gordon Place, Margaret Pluta,
Dorothy Porter, Arthur Pratt, Ruth M. Pratt, Maxine and Roger Preston, Eccles Pridgeon, Willie P.T. Jr., Audrey Pudva, Raymond Pudva, John Putnam, Barbara Pybus, Mr. Robert B. Pybus, Kathy Quinn, Doris Raytayan, Loretta Ray, Shirley Rains,
Bob and Molly Reagan, Frida Rader, Ethel Redline, Carrie Rhinelander, Edwin S. Rich, Mr. Richard J. Richard, Mr. Gerald J. Richard, Harriet Richardson, Hubbard Richardson, Donald Rybeck, Edward Rybeck, Lloyd N. Roberts, Catherine Roberts, Mrs. Lizette L. Roberts, Christopher Freeman Roby, Brendan Robinson.
Janice Robinson, Noreen Rogers, Madeline Y. Rollins, William J. Rollins, Stephen Rondeau, Winston Rose, Calgary Fahey Ross, Michael Ross, Raymond Ross, Frank Sadler, Mary Sadler, Mr. Selden O. Sargent, Minnie Bardella, Care Scanlon, Maggie Selza,
Jeffrey Lloyd Sheehan, Mildred Short, Peter Mark Simons, Peter K. Simons, Thomas Eric Singer, Bob Slayton, Dorothy Smith, Mary Smith, Thelma Smith, Thomas S. Smith, Drew Snow, Mr. Raymond E. Snow, Christy Sousa, Mr. Rick Sprague, Stillman Squires,
Jean St. Hilaire, Ann Stacy, Jim Stacy, William Steele, Mrs. Evelyn C. Stevens, Gerard Stevens, Carl Strong, Todd Stewart, John Lawrence Studebaker, Catherine Sugarman, Jerry Suich, Hugh Sullivan, Niles Steve Svensson, Sven Bertil Svensson, Cheech Sweeney.
Ronald Sweeney, Mr. Scott Sweeten, Priscilla Tabor, Dorothy Tamke, Tay, Kenneth Taylor, Marion S. Taylor, Chief Thomas T. Taylor, the Curfey relatives, the Gomulka relatives, Marlene Terrian, Gerard Thibodeau, Alan and Wanda Thomas, Rhoda Thomas, Virginia Thomas,
Wanda Thomas, Dee Ann Thompson, Dorothy and Henry Thompson, Otis Tilton, Elbridge and Lois Toby, Say Takuda, Lawrence E. Townsend, Thelga Townsend, Lorraine Trask, Louis Edson Tupper, Mary Turner, Gertrude Tyberski, Gary Ullman, Francis Van Houten, Norman Vandernoot,
Anne Verrecchia, Florence Veens, Stephen Falwinkle, Helen Marie Wallace, Richard Wallace, Betsy Ward, Polly Eleanor Ward, Mr. James Ware, Sylvia Ware, Andrew Warner, Calvin Washburn, Maurice White, Mr. Michael J. White, Ignacy Wurzbicki, Stella Wurzbicki,
Wanda Wurzbicki, Mrs. Catherine C. Wilbur, Gordon Wilder, Co. Williams, Kevin J. Williams, Robert Withington, Gary Duncan Wood, George Woodward, Pauline C. Ewells, Everett Young, Sam Zapala,
Fred Engerman Sr., Freddie Engerman Jr., Genevieve Engerman, Graydon Vigno Sr., Parnell Rogers, Modesta Vigno, William Vigno Sr., William Vigno Jr., Goldie Goldstein, Bill Scott, Barry Hanshaw, Jack Malley, Don Kiefer, Barbara Duncan.
Rox Bentley, Margaret Sisson, Doris Holbrook, Wiley Apt Jr., Thomas Smith, Richard Smith, Craig Cadwallader, Donna Cornelius, Sean Glue, Harvey Ramos Glue, June Parkinson, John Parkinson, Jack Bowers, Travis Lacasse, Shirley Mason,
Carol Brearley, Martin Greenwood, Adele Greenwood, Ina Mae Williams, Troy Williams, Gastinet Pollock, Andrew Pollock Sr., Gerald Best, Jay and Margaret Moyer, Chris Binder, Beth Anderson, Daniel Moulton Sr., Janice Bunker, Ethan Aubin, Albert Aubin Sr.,
Peter Pembricks, Wilfred and Lois Mason, Michael Ross, Ruth Thompson, Arthur Duhame Sr., Randy Duhame, Laurie Duhame, Dale Brabeck, Allegra Herbert, Max Morrill, for the Curfey and Gamalka families, Donald Muzzy, Jonathan D. Smith, Cadence J. Gregory Nichols.
Neil Anderson, Harry Anderson, Jean Riley, Harris Coombs, Ruth Miller, Alan Mooney, Chad Van Coor, Evelyn LeGros, Avery Smith, Loretta Smith, Ted Haley, Deb Robinson, John Robinson, John LaHare, Louis LaHare.
Maris Bandler, Warren Carlson, Eugene Brown, Daniel Mullen, Rita Murphy, Clyde Murphy, Marion Dugan, Charles Chuck Sullivan, Lee and Caroline Moore, Stan Furkey, John Swayze III, Vincent Jones, Joe McIntyre, John Coffin Sr., Lois Tatro, Aunt Teresa, Brooke Bennett, Elaine Norris, my grandparents, Joan Quino, Paul Quino Peter Arensky.
My name is Mike Calder. I'm the financial officer for the Visiting Nurse Association. The names you just heard read were named in honor of those who purchased butterflies, and it was quite an honor for all of us to read them. On my far right is Dr. Christine Maloney, VNH's medical director, and Chief Richard Mello from Lebanon Police Association. So thank you both. Thank you all.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well, it is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when the faith shall be sight, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well. those of you who have had any experience with organized religion know that the danger of putting a member of the clergy together with a microphone and an audience is that we might be seized by the desire to preach at you. You need not fear that today. Through the inspirational stories and testimony we have heard, through the music that has been offered, and indeed through the names that have been recalled, we have already sanctified this moment and made holy this place. I'd like to invite everybody who is able to come forward. This will help our butterflies as we release them and give them space to spread their wings and take flight. And as you watch your butterfly emerge from its box, I would invite you to think of these things. These magical creatures are strong and they are hardy, they are beautiful, and they each have their own stubborn will. Just like those we have come to remember today, these are individuals. And we will travel just part of the journey with them. But as they go forth, we will remember this time and give thanks that we have been called together to be part of this community that has formed this day, to remember and to celebrate those who are no longer with us and those who may be getting ready to depart. So let us now hold up our butterflies. And for those of us who participate in a religious tradition, give thanks for this miracle of life and for the miracle of lives that we have shared. And now let us send them forth. I would now like to invite everybody to join together with our choir to sing Amazing Grace.
Thank you again to all of our speakers, our readers, our music, our sponsors, community sponsors, our volunteers, and a special thank you to those behind the scenes people, Danielle, Brian, Terry, who have worked tirelessly to put this event on today, and all of you who have joined us today. Thank you. It is an honor to serve you.